Good morning. The piano music you just heard is your signal to settle into your seats and prepare for the start of our worship service. Before we begin, we have a few announcements, and we'll repeat those at the end of the service also. If you have a joy or sorrow that you'd like to share, please bring it forward. There are forms in the back of the chairs and at the back table, and you can leave it in the basket up here. Today after church is our first opportunity to form a Yellow Shirt Brigade and attend a fundraiser for Helping Hands of Georgetown. We will convoy over together. The event starts at 1 p.m. Don't have a t-shirt? We do have some available. We would love to see you up here on the chancel during worship services. Come join us as a lay leader. Come to a lay leader training on Sunday, October 9th after church to learn the ropes. Lunch is provided. More announcements will be in the messenger and in today's handout. And speaking of today's handout, if you have read it, Save the Date says that October 25th is the day before Halloween, and that is incorrect. So it should be October 30th, and they will have the trunk or treat in our parking lot for the kids. Good. You caught that. As part of our practice of being in caring community with one another, please let our board president, Molly Hornbuckle, know if you test positive for COVID shortly after being with us. Her email is president@sangabrieluu.org.
Good morning, and welcome to San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Whether you are here in the sanctuary or you're watching us at home, we're glad to have you with us this morning. My name is Pat Berthold. My pronouns are she, her. I found Unitarian Universalism a long time ago, and I've been a member of this fellowship since moving to Georgetown in the summer of 2019. During the past year, I joined one of our connections groups. The other members of my connections group are Linda Mueller, Mimi Ray, Clara Dugan, Mary Abbey, and Billye Adams. Mary, Billy, and I are presenting the service this morning, and we're being joined by Della. You might be wondering, what is a connections group? A connections group, also called a chalice circle or a covenant group in other UU congregations, is a type of small group ministry. My connections group has 6 members. Some of them might have up to 10 or 12 members. The groups meet monthly for sharing, discussion, and support of one another. They offer an opportunity to learn more about yourself and to build strong relationships with the other members. No matter the topic, the conversation is respectful and caring and leads to a greater understanding of ourselves and of each other. In each session, all participants have an opportunity to share their perspectives, tell their stories, and listen deeply. Our time together is structured. We begin with a chalice lighting that serves to center ourselves, and we end by extinguishing the chalice with a reading to send us safely on our way. San Gabriel subscribes to Soul Matters. This is a monthly theme-based resource guide for congregations. The connections groups use the small group packet. Each month, the packet includes an introductory poem or reading, a choice of 2, 3, or even more spiritual exercises, questions that encourage reflection on daily living, and several pages of recommended resources that help participants explore the themes in more depth. The resources include readings, poems, songs and music, videos, and recommended books. The theme for September is belonging. Some of the spiritual exercises this month were as diverse as picking a quote from a provided list to spend time reflecting on each day, exploring the indigenous history of the land that you live on, or sharing about a food or recipe that gives you a deep sense of belonging. Each month has a different topic, and the suggested spiritual exercises are different. The upcoming topics for this church year include courage, change, wonder, finding our center, love, vulnerability, resistance, creativity, and delight. If you have questions or would like to know more about connections groups, please come speak to one of us or Reverend Jamie or Karina. San Gabriel is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. If you would like to learn more about us and learn about upcoming events, please go to our website and sign up for our weekly newsletter, The Messenger. Please know that whoever you are, wherever you are from, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, whatever your gender identity or your immigration status, you are welcome here. Let us greet the morning in song. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn. It's number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. You can find the music and lyrics in the gray hymnal or follow along with the lyrics that will be projected behind me. Let us light our chalice with these words by our own Reverend Jamie. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith, for the promise of a new day, for the renewal of belonging, for the connection between and beyond. All that is, all that was, and all that is yet to come. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul to greet this day.
I invite you to join our community today with the words of Reverend Gretchen Haley. For this one moment, know only that you are loved, that you are safe and whole and loved. Know that you belong here, here among us, here upon this earth. In your body, However tired or broken your heart may be, whatever fear, disappointment, anger you carry, for this hour, know you are not alone. Feel the presence of others surrounding you, breathing beside you and with you, discovering together the way our voices rise and fall together, in harmony, in hope. Claim here a resilient freedom, the choice for love, for light, to live with joy and gratitude and praise as a form of resistance.
Our affirmation is an expression of our covenant with each other. Please join me in reading it responsively. You'll find the words, again, projected behind me. The doctrine of this church is love.
We are here to love.
The quest of truth is its sacrament.
We are here to learn.
Service is its prayer.
We are here to care for others.
To dwell together in peace.
We are here to live in peace.
To seek knowledge and freedom.
We are here to honor our differences.
To serve humanity and fellowship.
We are all connected in spirit.
To the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine.
We are here to grow.
Thus do we covenant with each other.
This we promise to do together.
And now it's that time for the Wonder Box. And Della is here to share it with you, with us.
What could be in the Wonder Box today? Can you help me by making some guesses?
Shake the box.
Jewelry? Huh? Raw eggs. Deck of cards.
A box of marbles.
A shoe.
A shoe. If it's very tiny, it's a shoe. It's a little present. It's actually an elephant. Is it an elephant? What do you think of when you see a present? Like Christmas? Well, when I see a present, I think of someone showing kindness to someone else. Let's see what our story is about today.
A Sick Day for Amos McGee, written by Philip C. Stead, illustrated by Aaron E. Stead, published by Roaring Brook Press. Amos McGee was an early riser. Every morning when the alarm clock clanged, he swung his legs out of bed and swapped his pajamas for a fresh pressed uniform. He would wind his watch and set a pot of water to boil, saying to the sugar bowl, "A spoonful for my oatmeal, please, and 2 for my teacup." Belly full and ready for the workday, he'd amble out the door. Every day, Amos waited for the number 5 bus. "Next stop, City Zoo," the bus driver would call. 6 a.m., right on time, he'd reply. Amos had a lot to do at the zoo, but he always made time to visit his good friends. He would play chess with the elephant, who thought and thought before making a move. Run races with the tortoise, who never ever lost. Sit quietly with the penguin, who was very shy. Lend a handkerchief to the rhinoceros, who always had a runny nose. And at sunset, read stories to the owl, who was afraid of the dark. One day, Amos awoke with the sniffles and the sneezes and the chills. He swung his achy legs out of the bed, curled them back again, and said, "Ugh, I don't think I'll be going to work today." Meanwhile, at the zoo, the animals waited for their friend. The elephant arranged his ponds and polished his castles. The tortoise stretched his legs and limbered up. The penguin sat patiently, all by himself. The rhinoceros worried that his allergies were worsening. The owl perched atop a tall stack of storybooks, scratching his head with concern. Where is Amos? The animals wondered. Later that day, hooray! My good friends are here! An elephant prepared a game of chess. Amos thought and thought before making a move. I'm too tired today to run races, said Amos to the tortoise. Let's play hide and seek instead. The tortoise hid inside his shell. Amos hid beneath the covers. Amos yawned. I could use a nap. The penguin sat quietly, keeping Amos's feet warm. Achoo! Amos awoke with a sneeze. The rhinoceros was ready with a handkerchief. I'm beginning to feel much better, thank you, said Amos to his friends. He swung his legs out of bed. Perhaps we'll share a pot of tea. Amos wound his alarm clock. It's getting late, he said. After all, we have a morning bus to catch. So Amos said goodnight to the elephant, goodnight to the tortoise, and goodnight to the penguin, and goodnight to the rhinoceros, and goodnight to the owl, who, knowing that Amos was afraid of the dark, read a story aloud before turning out the light. The end.
Our service today is about belonging. I think this story shows how people can respect one another. The zookeeper and the animals were kind to each other because Amos had a really good connection with the animals. They were very good friends. The animals noticed when Amos got sick, they came to him and showed him kindness so he could feel better. I think this story represents how if you treat others the way you want to be treated, you will have a good relationship. At church, we help each other and treat each other the way we want to be treated. We belong together because we try to be there for each other.
Thank you, Della. Back in the back at the table, there are some activities to keep people's hands together. I see we have one little munchkin back there already. And if anybody else feels the need to keep their hands busy, there are activities back there that adults could get and bring back to their seats as well. And that is time for the sermon.
So our sermon today is by the UU minister, Reverend Rod Richards, of our sibling congregation in San Luis Obispo, California. Much gratitude to him for sharing his work with the Soul Matters Network. What is the opposite of loneliness? Oh, I know. One can Google antonyms of loneliness and click thesaurus.com and find unhelpful suggestions such as unlonely, which is an utter cop-out, or sociable, close, loved, which are all good things to be, but miss the mark of being the opposite of loneliness. Or these: frequented, populated, inhabited, which obviously refer to lonely places rather than lonely people. None of these quite fit, and yet I feel like I know exactly what essayist Marina Keegan means when she describes it as not quite love, and it's not quite community. It's just this feeling that there are people, an abundance of people, who are in this together, who are on your team. And though, as I said, I don't think there's a word for the opposite of loneliness that fits precisely, I will offer one this morning, which I think comes close: belonging. The opposite of loneliness might be something like belonging. Excuse me. We all long to belong. Not that belonging arrives for us without its own set of complexities. Belonging, after all, has more than one meaning. Excuse me. Belonging can refer to being included in a group of people who are in this together, who are on the same team. And it can also refer to possessions, to ownership. My belongings. This belongs to me. Does that belong to you? Now I realize that many words have many words have more than one meaning, and such meanings can be clarified by context. But in this case, I think the meanings can possibly overlap in sometimes disturbing ways. For instance, people in love saying, "We belong together," can easily morph into one or the other or both saying, "You belong to me." You see how that moved from being on the same team to ownership? And while I realize that "you belong to me" and "I belong to you" are popular phrases in love songs and love poems throughout the ages, that only makes it more creepy, doesn't it? If you look at what the words express, it is asserting ownership rights. And just an aside here, if you ever listen to the 60s music again, you'll be shocked. It's not very PC. And I'm not saying everyone who penned or keyed or crooned those words meant that, but I am saying that in an attempt to overcome loneliness, to attain a sense of belonging, there can be sometimes, depending on what is required of us to belong, there can be a movement from being accepted by a group or a person or a community to a relationship that may be more accurately described as being owned by said group or person or community. When groups become insular, shielding themselves against any critique from inside or out, when groups demand unquestioning loyalty, when insiders are protected to a fault, when outsiders are dismissed to a fault. When these things occur, one must ask what belonging means. Which belonging are we talking about? One hears of this in street gangs and crime families. You hear from those who have been members about the power of that utter loyalty to those within, and the extreme danger and degradation that stems from the utter disregard and lack of concern for those without. That is not unique to those we identify as criminals. That same syndrome can happen in political parties and activist groups, in fraternities and sororities, in religious groups and social cliques, on campuses, in kindergartens, and within corporations, in families, among friends, under the banners of faith or freedom or football or Facebook. The loyalty to who and where and what we belong to, the gratitude for feeling a part of something, it can ramp up to the point, if we're not careful, and especially if the group welcomes or even demands this kind of perverted loyalty, it can ramp up to the point where we really don't care about anyone else. We really don't listen to anyone outside. We are accepted and connected and protected within the group, and that is enough. But is it? Is it truly what people are seeking? You see, belonging, even in its healthiest expressions, always requires something of us, if only the willingness on our own part to be accepted. That in itself takes work sometimes, to accept for ourselves the acceptance that is offered. Belonging always requires something. The question is, what is required? Some of you may be aware of a certain suspicion around joining that is, or at least has been, characteristic of Unitarian Universalists. Grounded in the self-reliant tradition given expression in the work of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and trusting an individual's lived experience as the sacred text from which to make meaning, we tend to be a little wary of groups, even our own Unitarian Universalist groups. There is the story of the Unitarian Universalist who tells her friend, "You should really come to our congregation. I think you're a Unitarian Universalist at heart." The friend says, "Well, I don't know. I'm not much of a joiner." To which the UU replies, "See, I knew it. That proves it." Speaking very generally, of course, UUs don't know how to feel about joining, especially about joining something called a religious community. It smacks of conformity, compromise, conversion. People may have had experiences joining other organizations or groups or communities in their lives where they came to realize that what was required was to believe something or pretend to believe something that they weren't able to believe. An experience of belonging slowly changed into an experience of displacement. They realized that to be true to themselves, they had to be themselves within the group, to be honest and authentic. And to do that was to put them somehow at odds with the requirements or expectations of belonging to that group. That's understandable. That happens. There's nothing wrong with the individual or with the group necessarily, just not might be a good fit. However, that led some people to a decision to either never join another group or to only join groups from which nothing was required, thus maintaining the individual's integrity. This is, I would suggest, a bit of an overreaction and not the healthiest way forward. It doesn't, after all, speak to that innate longing to belong. And I believe that's real. I suspect it's something that resides within all of us. And belonging always requires something. The question is, what does it require?
Before Billye wraps up the sermon, it's time for another song. So, if you would rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 318, We Would Be One. You can find it, gray hymnal, or back there.
Continuing, is this good? With Reverend Richard's sermon. Our first principle says that we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Many have pointed out that this principle, given that it is often offered in isolation from the other principles, and given its pride of place, our first principle is problematic in valuing the individual over and above the community. Everyone can see where a rampant, unchecked individualism has brought us. And pulling back just a little, I have to wonder how else can we truly affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person but in community? Through compromise and covenant and commitment to the greater good? By nurturing spiritual growth and practicing justice? Is this principle talking about my inherent worth and dignity? Yes, and also about yours and yours and yours and yours. Quote, never forget that you are absolutely unique, just like everyone else. This quote, this wonderful quote, has been misattributed to Margaret Mead, but I find it even more appropriate that the source is anonymous. Once again, I must face up to the fact that it's not all about me. It's about belonging to something bigger. It's about people, an abundance of people who are in this together, looking to create and sustain a congregation, a community, a society, a world that truly honors the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Any tiny shred of doubt any of us may have had about whether or not this is important should be swept away by the ongoing news of harassment, intimidation, discrimination, and humiliation suffered by individuals and marginalized groups in our communities and in the wider world. And that is one of the unspoken requirements of belonging here that I wish to speak about today. One of the expectations for those who have come to feel that they belong is to make someone else feel like they belong. It may be someone just walking in the door for the first time. It may be someone who's been coming for a while but a little unsure about where or if they fit. It may be someone not yet here or here for years and suddenly feeling displaced. I'm not saying that everyone is necessarily going to want to belong to our congregation, but we can make the opportunity available. If you feel accepted, offer that acceptance to someone else. And it doesn't end there or here with only us. At our best, belonging here will not disconnect you from the world out there, but will connect you in powerful and positive ways. UU minister and historian Reverend Mark Morrison Reed explains it to us this way, quote, the central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. In Keegan's words, it's just this feeling that there are people, an abundance of people who are in this together, who are on your team. The religious community is essential For alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and strength is renewed. Again, together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. That jumped out at me in preparation for this service. This is not a bad measure for our health as a community. This is not a bad measure for the health of our definition of belonging. At our best, belonging here will widen your vision and renew your strength. Have you ever been in a group where you could say of it, together our vision narrowed? Together our vision narrowed and our strength is spent, pointing accusing fingers at everyone else. Believe me, he says, I get it. I have been an active and enthusiastic participant in such groups. We in our congregation are not immune from the possibility of becoming that group, but at our best, our vision is not narrowed by being together, it is widened. And widening our vision does not mean that every opinion or perspective or approach or priority is equal. It does not mean we do not commit ourselves to action based on our best understanding. There are those things which affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person and respect for the interdependent web of all existence, and those things which don't. And it is our responsibility to speak out and sometimes act out and always live out our principles as best we can. But I also realize that my vision alone is too narrow, that there are things of which I am not aware that could cause me to inadvertently or carelessly betray my own highest aspirations, and so I rely on you all and on people out there to widen my vision. And our strength is renewed. Belonging should offer renewal. I know that many of you work so hard that I can't help but think there are times you leave your congregation exhausted and drained. I know that many are deeply troubled by what's happening in the world today, saddened by the ugly trends and fearful of the future, and that leaves us feeling exhausted and drained. I hope that belonging, knowing that there are people, an abundance of people who are in this together, helps to strengthen your spirit. I hope that the tiny circles we create and pull around ourselves, tiny groups that make us feel loved and safe and part of something, I hope that they help to renew you when life feels overwhelming. And I hope that you have a sense of the gift that your congregations are to the world, and the importance of your participation in keeping your congregation alive and vibrant and engaged. And I hope that whatever good you find, you will find a way to share that in the wider world. Because these congregations to which we belong are not a given. They only exist through those who choose to make it so. We who belong, we don't wish to lose that web we're in, this elusive, indefinable opposite of loneliness, this feeling I feel with you right now.
We take an offering each week to sustain the space that we call home and to support the work of our fellowship. We're very grateful this morning to have Judy Mayo with us as our musician. We've been missing you for a while. Her musical gift for us today is called Down to the River to Pray. It's a traditional American melody, and some of you will recognize it. It's been featured in a movie that none of us could remember the name of. Brother, we're out there now. Thank you. The offering will now be gratefully received, and thank you.
If you're not ready to get up and go down to the river now, you never will be. Thank you. Just a few reminders about the announcements. They are, if you don't have one and need more information, they're on the table in the back. The virtual training for transgender inclusion is a 6-week session online course, and it will teach you a lot. Weekly discussions begin Wednesday, October the 9th, and this slip tells you where you can sign up for that training online. There are 2 opportunities for Yellow Shirt Brigade. The first one is today in the parking lot at the library in Georgetown, so you can all gather in the parking lot here and convoy down together. And if you don't have a yellow shirt, there's supposed to be some available It's always fun to show up in your yellow shirts if you haven't done that before. Lay leader training will take place on Sunday, October the 9th after the service, and you all can come up here and do this because we did it. So please come. Jan Robertson's in charge of the training, and I'm sure she'll have help. So we're hoping lots of people do that. October the 30th, you know, is Trick or Treat in the parking lot, and our free pantry gets emptied every day. This morning there are about 5 cans of baby food in there, or there were last night when I looked. So practical supplies that you think if you had a family and you didn't have a lot of money would feed basic food to a family or what we need. And you can just leave them, if you don't get here on a Friday for pickup, you can just leave them. Our Habitat team is here 3 times a week, and we just volunteered to pick things up and put there and also to fill the pantry, but we can use a lot more help. I think that about covers the announcements, and so now we will close our sacred time together when we extinguish our chalice with these words, which again are by our own Reverend Jamie Yandel. We extinguish this flame, but not the chalice inside of our hearts, which serves as a beacon of hope, emboldened by its blaze. We are reminded that our strength as prophetic and powerful people is found when we come together at San Gabriel, which is here in Georgetown to stay no matter what may come our way. Thank you.